Welcome, BBCS, to episode number 147 of the Broken by Concept podcast. As you can see, guys, we got the three-way setup. Cupcake is back for third time coming, second time in person. You're down here for DreamHack, the finals for the LCO. Last episode, Andy, we had good discussions about. A lot of people love that episode. I think we have lots of people come from. It's like, I watched that episode and I really like the support coaching and stuff like that. Just for context for people, for Andy, we'll call you Andy Cupcake. High elo player, currently top 10. You and Curtis are top 10 is all you, right? 10, yep. And you've been coaching for how long now?
It has been just over a year now. So we're getting some experience.
And the last conversation, we talked a lot about review process. We talked a lot about what we thought. It was really funny in terms of our disagreements in the way that we thought about what perfect League of Legends meant to all of us, if you guys remember that.
I actually don't remember much about our last conversation.
We talked about which role was the easiest.
What was the hardest role in the game?
We talked about that for a while. We kind of ran out of time. So
Right. All right.
Yeah.
So since then, Curtis and I, we've started our below gold coaching programs. We've talked a lot about them in the last couple of episodes about our learnings, and it's been an awesome experience for Curtis and I. We love to learn so much more about the newer play base, because obviously we've only done Gold Plus for the last couple of years, and you've been working with them for a while since you started. You went straight into it.
No, I had no restrictions. And I think my typical student is Gold Plus, just the type of personality or player that is attracted to the content that I or we make maybe is more inclined to be in a little bit higher elo, but I've placed no restrictions. I do have a little bit of experience working with lower elos, so.
We want to learn from you, Andy. So the way that we've definitely, so when we sort of came in, fundamentals was sort of always everyone wants to learn fundamentals, right? And then it sort of went to, I want to teach them ganking, what's a good gank, what's a bad gank, jungle tracking, and then really realize, we actually need to bring it back to, Curtis had a huge realization for this as well, champ mastery. We talked about that a lot on the podcast. Obviously everyone hears about that, but we were all right, let's really make sure that we're playing our champions.
I think before we even dive into this, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, but we had a big discussion about how the support role was actually, in a way, less focused on champ mastery and champ specifics.
I can't remember.
Okay, so from memory, it was something along the lines of you were really surprised about how I was getting very granular about matchups.
Ringing a bell now.
So I was talking about matchups and how to play Lux into whatever, and you were like, I've been teaching more the support fundamentals holistically, and the champ you play, although it's important, not as important as kind of the support fundamentals. So shall we start at what are the support fundamentals? Have your thoughts on what the support fundamentals are changed over the past year in terms of what's important, what's not important?
So the support fundamentals that I teach, it's going to be wave states, laning, roaming, and comps, and the main focus for the early game is just going to be, I started with wave states, and I really want to make sure that my students understand what type of wave state they want, exactly why they want it, and how to affect that, and just to really break it down so that every kind of point is clear to them and makes sense. So it's not just Coach Cupcake is telling me to do this, I'm going to do this. It's they understand. And then, laning, I'm talking about spacing. I'm talking about towing the line between danger and safety, making sure you're right on that edge between danger and safety, between chaos and order, making sure that you're pushing yourself so that you can improve and you can, get better at spacing and pressuring and understanding what that looks like. And then I'm going to move on to roaming, roam timers, staying in fog, being a fog warrior, understanding how to generate roam timers, how to, successfully gank or affect the map with your roams. A lot of times people expect that the only successful roam is you just go and kill someone, but you can control, you can hover, you can shove, you can chunk, you can play the vision more, things like that. And that's, I would say that's...
Those are the main things that you
Yeah.
Okay, so my question to you now, so every time, always over the years, what I've been really thinking about is what's priority? Where should I put my focus and energy? At the end of the day, I don't do just 1 hour review session, just go over, every single little point. So let's say because I want to stick to just low elo for now.
Okay. And by low elo, you mean below gold?
Yeah. So let's say for a silver player, all those things you just listed, where would you put, what's the most important thing for them to start with? Prioritization.
So to
What do you
start,
notice?
I need to figure out what champion class we are going to be focusing on for the near future, because the feedback and the learning objectives I give for an engager versus an enchanter is going to be very different. And so maybe that's tying into a little bit of what you were saying, Curtis, last time with paying a little bit more attention to champion specifics. Now this is more of a champion class, kind of clumping them a little bit more, but that's what I want to make sure of. So I'm going to start off talking about champion pool, if they've put thought into it, and if it makes sense for them, if they enjoy it, if they are comfortable committing to one of the classes for the near future, so that I can have concise learning objectives for them. And then we're gonna go from there.
So the 2 classes for support is literally just enchanter. What are the classes?
So the 2 vastly most popular classes are enchanter and engager. Now I classify bard, pike, and thresh as playmakers because they're very unique, and you just kind of they don't really slot into either one of those. And then there are mages, which high elo just doesn't play whatsoever, but low elo.
So these are like Brand, Zyra.
Yep, Brand, Zyra, Xerath, Vel'Koz, champions like that. And there are wardens. And I don't think I've had a single warden coaching client like my entire...
That's like Braum and stuff like that.
Braum, Tam Tarek. I recently had someone in the school support message, where the Braum VODs, I want to watch this, and I can
people just don't play.
And what makes a warden comparatively to an engager like Nautilus? Say compare Nautilus to Braum.
Yeah, so the way that they are going to approach the early game is actually going to be quite similar because they're both melee, and just the success that they're going to find is going to be different because they have much less threat and they're much more susceptible to getting poked out by range. And so that's the cool thing. Like wardens are going to approach the game similarly but have different results to engagers, and mages are going to approach the lane similarly but have slightly different results to enchanters. It's just like that range difference is how you're really going to approach the lane.
Have you found a particular class of support having more success in the lower elo brackets?
So this is something that I'm just paying a lot of attention to because I don't really have enough data. And I do notice I've had like a Zyra in low elo. I'm currently working with Mr. DeBeef. He is a Maokai one trick in low elo. And this is not a champion that you're going to see in higher elo. And so I actually had quite a lot of self-reflection and learning by coaching him, because what I wanted to do, what I thought was important for coaching low elo, is to teach the game and to really emphasize the fundamentals. And like, don't worry about the champion you're playing. Like, this is how you need to think about the game. We need you to learn the game and reduce the variables. But it just wasn't really working because Maokai is just, every champion is slightly unique, And so I learned the hard way that I had to emphasize Maokai. What does Maokai do?
So we're talking about like E usage, W usage, Q usage, like that stuff like that. How do you think about these abilities?
I was telling him to, try to look for the 2-step process. So the 2-step process is you engage, you soften them up, you back out immediately, and then your next engage, you can commit and fully kill them. And Maokai just doesn't have a long enough engage range, and so he can't. And so, that was a bit of a learning experience for me.
Yeah. Because isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it's very interesting.
So that was more of like a really specific case because for Maokai, but for other champs, you feel like you don't have to go that deep into the champion itself.
Yeah, I would say
like let's say for Seraphine, do you have to like break down Q usage?
Wait, Nathan, make sure your mic's like in your face because like you're like that.
Break down Q usage.
So I do like every champion that we're going to be talking about. There are champion specifics and then there are like class specifics. So if I'm talking to a Nami or a center player, they need to put a lot of effort and attention into the center Q or the Nami W because it has a damage, it has a healing. You need to get the most out of every ability in the game. And so there are champion specifics and then there are class specifics. What are you doing with the wave as an enchanter, And then you can just kind of marry those two concepts together.
And have you found that it really is champion specific? Some champions you can maybe be a little bit sloppier with the champ specifics, and other champs you've got to be, you can kind of make up for that with good kind of like support fundamentals, or is it you found overall that support fundamentals are more important than champ specifics?
I think it depends on the champion. So some champions just fit into a class quite neatly, and then you don't really have to delve into all of the variation
The
for that
nitty-gritty,
champion. Yeah. So if I was coaching a Nautilus, he's quite a good champion to just learn Engager fundamentals on. But Maokai, or if I had to teach like a Tana or Braum or a Tarek, that would be quite tricky to explain what needs to happen and why. So it probably depends.
So have you ever considered, okay, let me frame it a different way. Have you had a client that has rocked up to a session and then let's say for example the Maokai player, and you just thought to yourself, why is he putting himself through this? Why
is it making the game, the journey so much harder?
Have you viewed it through that lens of like, shouldn't we play something else to learn the game and then branch out later on? Has that ever crossed your mind?
It would happen if my low elo client was considering Bard or Pike or Thresh. I think Maokai, he's simple. He's just a lot shorter of a range, so it's hard for Mr. DeBeef to feel out carrying a lane early, right? Carrying a laning phase with Maokai support versus carrying with Nautilus is going to be different. And I want him to feel the impact that you can have. But it's a simple champion. It's relatively easy to execute. It has a pretty linear identity, and he enjoys the champion. So I was very willing to work with him on that one.
Okay.
But I definitely do pay attention to ease of execution and clarity of champion identity.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's so important. I've actually recently had Samuli. He has been in Soul 2 for a year playing Nidalee, right? And we've talked about it. He's aware of how hard that journey is. Gold 4. So he was silver. I think he got to gold 4, and
I love it in his reaction. Like, he's like,
yeah.
That sounds like
and he watching this, he knows. I mean, we've been through absolutely like Q usage, playing how to fog a war, going in, and we just had this review that recently this last week. It was just absolutely breaking point. Like basically, he had to play around it was like a Kassadin who got a solo kill, and he needed to go there to make sure he didn't get a free wave pushing. Like even in like gold 4, like the game's too easy for the Kassadin. You can't let him push the wave in and get a good reset, right?
I mean, on the Kassadin on the enemy team.
On the enemy team.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and then I think he even realized it's like, this is going to be another thing every game. Like, we're not even talking about champ mastery stuff. I mean, we're still doing that, but he's going to learn the game at such a high level. And we literally got to the turning point. Okay, let's just play Wukong. Let's get really champ identity. He's gone from gold 4 to gold 2 so quickly.
Wow.
And he's just he's like, Nathan, I can kill people. And it's just because I've worked on I have a whole Wukong guide section for my Soul 2 Academy. And it's such a relief for me, just confirming again that ease of execution champions, it's much better to learn the game, I think, through that, to start off with.
Yeah.
Because it's just your journey. You actually will get gaslit and you get so confused. And
the game is already so hard.
Yeah.
Like the game
You don't need
is
to add
already
extra
really
things.
hard and very complex and takes a lot of time and energy. Like, yeah. I was saying this last episode, Andy, that I had a client in Silver, and she was a Zyra mid player in like Silver 4 for quite a long time.
Okay.
And then she picked up ASOL and she got to gold 4. Like basically within, we're talking very, very short period of time.
So just like more clarity of identity and maybe just a better spot in the meta.
Meta is a thing, but I would say more so just clear reference points.
Clear identity, yeah.
Very clear reference points, ease of execution, and works well in those lower elo games.
So did you have a conversation with her at the start of your coaching about, understanding what she is signing up for with an off-meta pick?
So I don't know if you know. So Nathan and I have actually structured our programs where we have approved champions.
No, I didn't.
All right. So basically, when you sign up to one of our Blue Gold programs, we have a list of champions that are quote unquote approved, and these are the champions that we highly, highly, highly recommend that you play if you want to get better at the game and get to gold as fast as humanly possible. And so I have a list of I don't know about your program, mine's about 12 or 13 champions.
Mine's 11.
And like you, they're different classes, like from a few assassins, a few mages, etc. But these
don't mind assassins and low elo.
Yeah, simple ones like Diana and Echo and stuff like that. and a wide variety of complexities if someone wants a more challenging journey. Like I'd have put Zed in there if someone wants to play Zed, because Zed actually has clear reference points, but he's just got harder execution. My point being is that I make it very clear when someone joins the program that you're going to struggle if you don't play one of these champions. And your life will be a hell of a lot easier if you do play the champions. But some people just want to play another champ because that's what they want to do. Like Mr. DeBeef wants to play Maokai. And that's okay. I'll still help them out. But my point being is that it's much easier because of the clarity of reference points, but also they teach the game in a better way.
Have you found that, players who have their niche off meta pick, who then move to a more meta pick and find success, do they regret playing that off meta pick? Did they like underestimate how fun it is to climb and see results, or what do you think?
So I'll go back to my similar example. He's just loving killing people, and like just winning games. Like at the end of the day, like I hear a lot of the time people want to say like, Nathan, what's the best jungler to learn fundamentals, right? And it's just such a scary question to me nowadays, because I'm like, okay, I guess you could play Nidalee, Lee Sin and stuff like that in gold, but there's so much going on in League of Legends. You actually don't even know, like, what happens if I'm a 6-0 Lee Sin, right? I played fundamental, really good League of Legends the whole game, and I just misexecute a fight, like literally just in the team fight. Now, you're sort of like confused, like, I'm going to lose that game now. I've given, 700 gold shutdown and stuff like that. And am I just bad fundamental player? You know what I mean? And it's right. Versus if you die on, like, let's say you're 6-0 as a Wukong or a Lilia and stuff like that, it's much more, you can still win the next team fight. You're good to go.
Yeah, like low elo games are typically longer.
Right? That's right. And there's lots of team fighting.
That's right.
There's not much,
a lot of team fighting, a lot of grouping.
You want to emphasize that scaling. You don't want to bottleneck yourself into winning immediately, for sure.
It's so hard. And again, you don't know actually if you're improving fundamentals as a player, because we can go over reviews as much as we want on Nidalee, but the problem that the next game's the next problem, the next problem, the next problem. You miss this information. It's just so overwhelming for your mental stack.
Yeah, agree. But to be honest, to answer your question, I actually haven't interviewed many people that are one tricks that have expanded. The people that have got success with their one tricks typically don't expand. They actually kind of all in commit. So I'll be honest, I actually haven't really had many of those clients.
But so your Zyra player example.
Oh, in that example,
yeah.
Where they don't play, they give up on their, you're saying
on their niche meta pick, and then they pick up the ASOL. To
be honest, I actually haven't asked that question. That's actually a really good question. I should ask.
Because if you come across students in the future that have a niche off meta pick, and it's going to slow down their journey, and then you can say, I worked with some of these players, they were in a similar situation, they just played meta, they played the recommended champ, they had success, they loved it,
they had fun,
loved climbing, and
I'll be honest, like I've said that, and then they swap champs and they get success, but I never asked them after they get success, kind of like, do you regret or do you not regret not swapping sooner? That's a great question though. Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Well, the way that I've sort of talked about it, I've sort of tried to spin it in a positive way for Smully, and it's true. Like, he's learned a lot about the game, even though he's been in gold for a year playing Nidalee, like basically zero progress. He has progress. Like, he's understood a little bit more. Okay, waves are important. Like, this is how you close out games. You think about objectives, controlling areas of the map with Nidalee traps. Like, and he's sort of applying that to his Wukong here and there, but it's just not going to be as unforgiving when you make you miss a spear in a late game team fight and you get caught or something like that. So I can ask that question as well, for sure. But I've had again, people that play one champion with clear reference points is the best success I've always seen. And I don't think there's much other way of making the game fun, have a really clean journey.
And that's the thing about, like, we can say playing these really difficult challenges in a way playing League on hard mode, and you're gonna have more challenges. It's gonna be a tougher time to climb. But if you climb, not only does that, we're all human, we're affected by confidence, and climbing feels really good, but you're versus higher level competition, right? And
it makes you better at the game.
Yeah, emphasizing like just finding a way to climb, and then having the best level competition out there can actually be really good for a journey as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, that's how a lot of us all do it, right? As to get high level first, like I was at Udi one trick. Very simple execute mechanically, and I got to rank 2 challenge with that, and then I learned the game after that.
Yep.
Ziggs.
I was never a one trick though.
Yeah, you played a lot of the champions.
I played a lot of different majors.
What did you do on your climb? Did you play also the supports?
The first time I got into Masters, I was a bit of a theory crafter. I was a bit of a hipster. I played like things that no one ever played. I played Trundle support when it just wasn't a thing. I played Rumble support. That was the first time I got to Masters. And
Did you like play hundreds of games on these things?
No. I was a bit. I remember. I think we talked about this in the first episode that we've done. So I had a very. I queued up full, and I needed to choose support. After I got approached by some players. So I'm probably not the best example.
You're terrible example. Holy moly.
But no, the first time I got Challenger, I think I was playing a lot of Enchanters in Season 7. It was like Nami and Karma and just being an absolute psycho.
And yeah, I guess you never really did because we played lots of Twisted Treeline together, didn't you, Curtis?
I never really was a one trick. I just played a wide variety of majors.
Yeah.
But I had an identity as a player. I had a very clear identity.
Yeah, you're the skill shot guy.
Yeah.
But you know, if we've played thousands of games and we're high elo, like we are in a different situation to someone new to the game. Or
That's right.
That's
right. That's what we always need to bring it back to.
Because this is something that I think about. I have like some long-time veterans in the school of support, and I know there is that option of recommending them to be like somewhat of a draft wizard, not like just one or two tricking, but like if you can play different support classes, you can really have a huge impact on the game. Like you can win a draft, and you don't need necessarily thousands of games on that champion to be able to execute that. And especially if they have those thousands of games already, then it's like, you know, how do I incorporate this into their journey?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you can. Are you talking with all ranks, or are you talking with
high elo?
High elo, that's right.
D2, D1 plus.
Yeah, if you can kind of play differing champions that tick a lot of boxes, like across different classes, and like pick for a draft, yeah, you can climb a lot of LP. But it's a weird one, isn't it? It comes with some consequences potentially later down the line.
I need to do more reflecting on that because personally, like I have found the most success just mindlessly picking a generically good solo queue champion. So I've gone through my draft wizard phases of like picking 4th or 5th and like countering the whole enemy composition with a well-timed brawl.
The beautiful turret game.
Yeah, exactly. But at the moment, I'm just one-tricking Karma. I've one-tricked Bard. I've one-tricked Pike at certain times of my career. And that's when I've reached my highest elos.
Okay.
With complete disregard to drafts even at the highest level. So
I always say the more I focus on draft, the worse of a player I am.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you don't really get better as a player that way. Like in my experience as well. Like if I see a comp and it's like, I've been guilty of this. I'm like, okay, this is a great Lissandra game. I'll win that game with Lissandra, but I don't really learn much. I don't feel like I'm actually getting better at the game. Like I win that game, but I don't feel like I've actually got better.
Or even better at the champion, right? Because it's just you're not getting challenged.
Not getting challenged. And then Nathan has a really good point about this. Like learning to play a hard game with your champion makes you a really good player because you're forced to get creative. Like those games where like you play Bard or Pike and it's a really shit Pike game and you have to do some crazy shit
Pushes
to win
you,
and push your
really
limits.
pushes you.
That's what makes you a very good player, in the end.
Agreed.
But that's hard mentally for people to withstand, right? It's like, it's so easy. I could have just picked Tarek this game and won, and they look at the LP but in reality, if they played their main champion and actually tried to push the limits on that champion, that would be a better player in the long run.
Yeah.
It's just long-term or short-term thinking really at the end of the day.
Yeah, I wonder if it's role-specific as well because there's such a clear time when your team needs engage, typically from the support role, and other times when, having that enchanter and playing that front to back is going to feel really good, but I don't know if that applies to jungle or mid. Is there a game where one class just makes the draft so much easier?
No, but I don't think the discussion we're having now is even relevant below Master.
Yeah.
So like for me, when I'm working with a Master Plus client, I actually do talk about pool. Champion pool matters. If you want to climb Master Plus, in my opinion, seriously, pool matters. Like I try to tell my clients, if you're in Master Plus, you want to have a pretty well-rounded pool of at least 4 champions, right? You're going to have a core 2 or 3 that really shape your identity as a player, or even core 2, and then you're going to have maybe the 3rd or 4th champ are going to be more counterpicky, right? For example, let's say, and ideally you cover many bases. So my pool is exactly that. So the way I shape my pool is I have a core 2 or 3 that I have a lot of mastery on that create my backbone of my player identity, but they all fill different niches. So I'll have a Syndra, then I'll have a Cassio, and then I'll have a Vex. And then I'll have a niche counterpick, or in this case, it's actually at the moment, it's like Syndra, Ari, Cassio, and then a niche like Galio Vex type thing. And that way I have so much, I can pick for so many different compositions, and that wins me a lot of games. Now that doesn't mean I'm like playing I'm not really playing the meta. I'm playing my champions, but I'm covering a wide variety of.
We've rounded out the pool over.
I've rounded out my pool, right?
That's interesting because they all just sound like a mobile mages to me. And obviously they have very different identities, but what I was imagining was you'd have like a Syndra, and then you'd have a Zed, and then you'd have a Galio, and you'd have like a Singed.
No, so in my experience, it's very rare that a player can actually play multiple styles to a very high level. Like, I still feel like, you can dabble in those ones that are in between. Like, Ahri is kind of like an in-between pick. It's not a mage, and it's not an assassin. It's kind of like that in-between, right? Most assassins can play Ahri, and a lot of mage players can play Ahri. But then it's very rare that you're going to get a mage player that can also play Yasuo to an extremely high level. It's just, there are players out there like that. They're rare, though. The average player typically they're more comfortable with a specific style, and then they can kind of dabble in that. For example, right, Galio is a great in-between one. Ahri is a great in-between one. Vex is a great in-between one. These are champions that are not straight front-to-back immobile control mages, but they all have mage aspects, right? So that's what I recommend. And then for assassins, we'll go the other way around. So you could play Zed, Akali, and then a middle ground champ like a Galio. So you see what I mean?
Yep.
So like you typically have your identity with a middle ground pick. But there are always exceptions. I have got players in my program that can play a Victor and then play an Akali, both to an extremely high level. Those players typically...
Master Plus?
Yeah, Master Plus. And those are very good players. But I would say they're the exception to the average player.
Yeah, no, I experience the meta starting to matter. Honestly, if I didn't hear your discussion of Masters Plus at all, I would say high plat, it starts to feel relevant for me. Like, I need to emphasize like what picks are strong. You can't just pick whatever you feel like it. Like the drafts are going to be harder to play if you put no thought at all into the draft.
Oh, there's no doubt they're harder. P2 plus. You're spot on. High plat P2 plus meta has an impact, but it's a lower severity. Like the higher you get, the more the meta becomes relevant, right? Master Plus, it is most definitely relevant. Platinum, it is a thing. It's not that in my from a mid lane perspective, I don't really think it's that important because I literally have so many people that have got to master tier one tricking a random champion like Nico or Diana.
It's sort of like
I've literally got a Diana one trick.
Yeah,
to master
the champ mastery. It sort of overrides more so the draft.
But it is harder. You're spot on though. It is harder for sure.
There might be a difference in roles, but I don't have that experience of having an off role and getting to master just yet. So.
But do you I want to kind of bounce back on that though, because I actually think, again, I play support casually. Like I'm not a support main, but there's no way. Let's say you're in an enchanter meta, right? That happens. There are enchanter metas. I can't visualize a scenario where like Nautilus is that, Nautilus can't just be picked.
No, it's like, well, Nautilus is going to be solid, right? But I would be thinking about like a player that loves Senna.
Right.
And then you're trying to play Senna in every game, and then you're going to run into that Nautilus, that Pike, whatever, and then you're going to have a really, really tough time because the matchup is just getting too rough. Players are just understanding your champ's weaknesses a little bit too much.
Interesting. So do you think supports can get really bullied by counterpick, like severely in Platinum?
Yes. Well, high plats. I start to notice it. I would say
as a jungler, when I think about pathing, especially for my Diamond Plus members in Salty Black, a lot of the bot lane's dictated by the support matchup. That's a lot of the pathing,
Yeah.
If it's tank versus tank, it's not actually that priority to really path. If it's enchanter versus tank, that increases the priority of chaoticness.
Yeah. Well, tank versus tank. I don't even like the word tank. No supporters ever tank.
Sorry. Yeah.
I would say engager versus
Leona
engager.
and Nautilus.
Yeah. I would say that's quite volatile.
Yeah.
And whichever jungler impacts that lane first is going to have a huge impact. I'm not sure. It sounds like your experience is the opposite.
Yeah, it's the opposite. Yeah.
You want to stay away from a Leona Nautilus lane.
Well, it just drops priority. Like I still will look to impact it, but it's not as important as like a Caitlyn Karma lane. Something like that.
Of course. Interesting. Yeah.
So that becomes really important. Yeah, again, the way that I view it, it's more dictated by the support.
It's all interesting. It's interesting how we all have different views about like the severity or the impact of a specific like we would all see, let's say, like a Nort v Leona lane, and all have a very different reaction or feeling towards that lane and what that lane means or how it would play out. Nathan would have his take, you would have your take. It would all be kind of similar, but we all have like a. I don't know about you, but do you have like a physiological? I get like a feeling when I like a certain lane matchup.
Yep.
Like you feel what it's going to be like.
I imagine the weaker champion, and then I feel pressured.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit scared. Something needs to happen.
You've got all these like things you're remembering of what happens if I don't do anything, and like slowly lose in a game or something like that.
Yeah.
The feel aspect of the game is very important. Sometimes hard to explain as well, isn't it? I actually really struggle again with support matchups. Like I can't really explain to you why Leona Norris isn't really something I prioritize that much, but it doesn't make sense. Like everyone's like, oh, it's really volatile, but I'm like, well, it depends.
Yeah, well, like engagers, if they can't engage, then they're gonna have a rough time. Like I know that you can just play slow and scale up on a Nautilus or Leona, but that they have engaged tools and they don't have great disengaged tools. And so if they can use their kit, then they're gonna feel really good. But like while we're on the topic of even counter picks, I said that support has a huge influence on counter picks and ADC not too much.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that for jungle and mid?
Well, because I saw you made a tweet about the order, what the order should be like. So you want to kind of repeat that?
Yeah. So I think that jungle is the most blindable role because you don't have to interact directly with your counterpart if you use some intelligent pathing. That's just my take. I haven't played a lot of jungle. But it feels like you can path towards one of the lanes and you will be able to secure camps for the most part.
All right, so for your order is jungle number 1 pick, you think?
Jungle, blindable, ADC.
Number 2?
Yep. And then it was mid, because mid is in the middle of the map and support and jungle can always be nearby to help out. And it's a short lane, so the wave states are less volatile than the side lanes, and so it doesn't feel like it's as game changing as for the next two. And then I actually put top below support, so top is the next one, and it's not timeless, but at the moment, the meta feels like, or at least when I made the tweet, it was very bot centric. And while there are volatile top matchups, I would much rather have a fed bot lane after 15 minutes than a fed top lane after 15 minutes. I've won so many games, being ahead of the enemy bot lane, and an 8-0 Fiora doesn't matter.
Yeah,
the bot lane is going to secure the
neutrals. Every mid priority, every shove, everything, you just win the whole game.
Yeah. And then support. If you have the champion pool to back it up, I believe you can solo carry a draft with an intelligent counter.
Well, there you go, Coach Cupcake. Buy support last pick. So mine would be bot number 1, bottom.
What's bot? ADC or something?
ADC, yep. And then jungle, then mid, then support, then top. But it sort of, I guess, depends. Like if I had you on my team, I would like you to last.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like in my experience, that's like I have a different take because, yes, if you have a very competent support, like you said, with a very diverse champ pool and they know how to play the matchups, giving them support counterpick is very, very impactful. Like if you're on my team, I want to give you counterpick. But for the most part,
top last, right?
Top last. At least in my experience, it's all of you. If I don't know who the supports are, I'm 100% giving top last pick.
So you agree, Kev, as bot number 1?
Yeah, I think bot number 1 is
bot, jungle, mid.
I've just never seen AD carry counterpick matter.
No, it doesn't matter. Again, the way I think about pathing, it's all about the support matchup in my eyes. That changes my entire game.
And I'm kind of biased from a mid lane perspective because the jungle influences the mid matchup so much.
It does. Yeah.
Like jungle, like if you like, for example, like, okay, like if I see the enemy have a Victor and then there's a Rek'Sai in the game, like the game is so hard to win for Victor. Like if Victor has to verse a Rek'Sai, it just shatters everything he wants to do. Like you know as a Rek'Sai player versing the mobile mage mid how easy it is to kill a mobile
gank
mage.
Angle over Raptors War, here we go.
My point being is that like if a mid laner can, or if a jungle can kind of get a little bit more information about the laners, like the amount of mobility they have, I think that if a jungler has a diverse pool as well, they can punish it like pretty hardcore.
I think that's like there's a diversity of champ class, right? Because ADC is very linear, range, do damage. Junglers can have a little bit of
more
diversity. I think support is the most diverse.
Yeah.
You can play pretty much anything.
Yeah. And it matters a lot. Like you said, if someone picks a center and then you pick Leona or something, that changes the entire game. Or like a Blitzcrank or something.
Yeah, or even like compositionally. If you are versus
a great Renata
champions, you play Rel or you play Braum or you play Taric, that can win the entire game. I've had this experience in my professional games. I remember in 2021, my last full-time year in playing pro, I picked Zillion, I think, into a comp that just couldn't handle it. I could get
a low range melee comp.
Yeah, I could get through laning phase. My ult was devastating for their pick tools, and that was that. And that's the thing. Like you remember those moments, and you don't need 1,000 games on Zillion to be able to heavily impact that draft necessarily.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Renata is one of the champs as well. Like a great Renata game, it's amazing.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah. When I play North, I ban Renata. That's my ban.
Yeah, but I feel like Renata into specific comps that are very linear.
Very
and
hard to
it's
use,
very good.
I think that might be the next step for you guys in your secondary support journey is learning more outside of the matchup and more compositionally. When does Rel look better than Rakan and why? You know,
So I guess in summary, support after Platinum, champ pool's probably really important compared to maybe Curtis and I's mid and jungle.
Out of interest, what size do you have? Like a number of the size of the champ pool that you recommend for players? Like, what is that?
1 to 2 champions, 2 max of the same class for low elo, so that I can focus on one class and teach that class through a champion lens that makes sense.
And that's bronze, silver, gold.
Iron, bronze, silver, and then I think the middle line is somewhere around gold. I'm still kind of figuring that out, but yeah, that's how I would class it at the moment.
And so maybe potentially in gold you would have 3.
Yeah.
But ideally still in the one class.
I think by gold we can add another class.
Okay.
It's just like at the start of coaching, I need to teach one at a time. And so that depends how long we've had coaching as well.
Right.
And so the longer time we're going to have coaching, the more that we can kind of add another class when we reach gold.
Because they've learned to champion properly, and then now they've got that champ, they can learn in another champ properly. Yeah, that's what I really want with my Iron, Bronze, Silver. I don't really care about what other champs you played in the past. I need you to learn how to learn one champ first, then we can slowly add more to the pool. And that's why literally for me, one champion, only focus, dodge any game you don't get that champion in Iron, Bronze, Silver, and low gold. And then after that, we can add 2 champions. And then, I think 2 champions for jungle up until, mid diamond is good. And then after that, 3 champions.
I think there's something to actually learning a champion, that process of really delving into the details.
It's so important.
There's something there.
Yeah.
Like that feel, because as we all know, League's a very feel-oriented game. There's so much feel and so much intuition that you need to build, so much muscle memory. And, you're the king of this, Andy, where, you at some point, you become the champion, right? Like at some point, you and your bard and your plaque and stuff. And that is a very powerful feeling, but you only need to feel it once. Because once you feel it once,
you know what you need to get to.
You know what is possible on other champions. Like when you, even to this day, right? Like, even in your solo queue, you have levels to your champions, right? You've got probably your Tom or your Pike, your Bard, your babies. These are the ones that you can become the champion. Now that doesn't mean you can't play Zillion, but you probably don't become the champion of Zillion, right?
I'm just using his kit in this game.
You just using him, take his body, pretend to be him.
Yeah.
But you're very aware of that. You know that there's probably a feeling in the game that I can't really take control fully, right?
I do want to go on a little bit more about this point because there's there's been a change from 2018 to now. And I was very field-oriented in 2018, as you guys know, giving my coaches. And nowadays, everyone has gotten better, and being coaches, you have to have a very, very deep and precise understanding of the game and of champions. And that deep understanding and precision has led me to be more of thinking than feeling, and having plans, and having reference points, as you like to talk about, but less just becoming a champion and dancing and thriving in the chaos. It's like there's less chaos, like there's order. I know what to look for, I know what to do, I know the strengths and weaknesses of a lot of champions. I've made guides on a lot of different types of champions, and I've played the game for a long time, so I have a rough idea for a lot of champions what to do. And so I'm not sure how far we can pursue that line of thought of feeling and becoming. It doesn't quite resonate with me the same as it did back then.
Interesting.
Does it still resonate for you guys? Or do you even see yourselves as...
I want to frame it a different way. Really, okay, so like you said there, we all played the game for a long time. Even when I was a coach, we had this conversation off camera where I would kind of know what to do, but sometimes not know why. Right. And every year we coach, all we're doing is basically saying, okay, I have an intuition about why this is the case. And then you just got to figure out, give it a label, give it a term, and break it down till you understand it perfectly. Right. We, how many episodes ago, maybe 10 episodes ago, we introduced this model of learning called the Dreyfus model of learning. And essentially how it interprets learning is that at the start, there's kind of like rules that you follow. So let's say you're trying to learn, I think they use tennis or something, and there's like kind of these rules. It's like, you don't even have to understand them, just follow them. Here are the rules of tennis. This is proper form to hold a racket. This is how you should hit the ball. This is how your footwork should be. Don't even think about why it's the case. Just do it and follow the rules, okay? So then what happens, you get the reps in. You follow those rules, kind of. And then what happens, you start to develop muscle memory, and you kind of get muscle memory of the rules. You know how to execute now those rules. Now, then what happens, in order to progress in your mastery, you need to break the rules intentionally. So instead of, let's talk about League now. So instead of, say, Lux, farming until 1300 and getting my Lost Chapter, I want to see what it's like if I heavy trade early and maybe go for an early Dark Seal and Anthem reset. Feel that what's like, feel it out. And you might do that a bit. And then while doing that, two things are going to happen. You're going to realize why that rule in the first place existed. Now, that doesn't mean you have to follow that rule moving forward, but at least you know now why that rule is getting taught, because it feels good to get Lost Chapter on Lux, right? And you do that, and you test and break the rules intentionally. And then at the end, what happens, you keep building that mastery, you've broken the rules, and you find out what works for you, what sort of how you like to play the game. And then you don't even think in rules anymore. There are no rules because everything's internalized. Yep. And that's what I perceive to be kind of becoming the champion. You actually have internalized all the reference points. And that's what I believe what you did with your Bard and Pike is that you did have rules. They just weren't articulated. They were so deeply embedded, you didn't even know what they were. But you intuited them through reps and muscle memory and trying to win League of Legends with that champion. But what our job is to do is distill that into rules. So when you do a champion guide, it's like, okay, these are the things that we need to be, these are the boxes we ideally want to be ticking for this champion to have success and solo queue in this situation. And then you get the client to do that. Now, it's not like, and we know when you get high elo, you don't think in rules. Like there's definitely reference points and boxes you want to tick, but we are able to then sometimes situationally break those rules or not do that because we know that this situation calls for something else. So my point being is that I think that, there is such a thing as kind of eventually becoming the champion, but all that is, and the way I interpret that is, you've just internalized all the rules and developed so much muscle memory, and you're able to kind of go free flow. You see what I mean?
We have to provide a framework for players to learn, right? We can't just say, go play League of Legends, go play a champion.
Yeah. That's the order you talk about.
Yeah. But what this resonates with me with is like the words always and never. They're not going to apply, right? These rules are just there to help. In general, this is what's going to feel good. And yeah, I fully agree. You have to learn when to break the rules. And this is something that I find a lot in my coaching sessions where there is a specific mistake, but I want to distill that specificity to like generalizations. I'm like, don't worry about this situation. This is kind of following a pattern. This is going to happen in a lot of games, and you're going to want to, in general, do this.
What's an example? Give us an example.
you are weak side and you want to, in general, position on the top side of lane to deter ganks. Now, sometimes that's going to lead you to successfully survive in that gank so that you can push the enemy jungle away and not allow them access to your ADC for free. Sometimes you're just going to die. Sometimes you're going to have to take a 2v2 all in. But in general, that is like where you want to be. And of course you can break that rule, but distilling that and allowing my students to see the generalization so they have an idea of the concept first and foremost is valuable. And then once they are proficient at that concept, they can learn when to break it.
Yeah, I can resonate with that as well, because an example is like you're playing Echo, and Echo gets tower plates really well. So if the enemy roam, more often than not, it's going to be really good to just get plates. But then there are going to be situations where you can just double kill bot lane.
Not always, of course.
It's like not always. So yeah, so I definitely resonate with that.
Yeah, no, the words always and never just trigger a little bit it triggers me a little bit. When I hear a student ask like, so in this situation, should I always, or like, do I never do X? And it's like, I can't use those words.
Yeah. You know my response? Show me the clip. Give me a clip. Let's get into the details. You just have to. It's just a specific situation. But what I love, my best coaching clients are the people that have been in my program for a long time. They say, okay, this is the general rule that I'm playing, and I'm this is my intention, and I'm like, this is how I'm approaching the situation. I'm breaking this rule or that, and then sometimes it goes bad, but that's like the next level of like learning. That's like a really good review session.
Yeah,
because it might usually that's might be the end of the review. It's like, okay, I didn't trade sides of the map this time when I should have, but they were aware that was an option, but intentionally not trading sides of the map.
Yeah, no, I have a student in the school of support, and her name is Lily, and I think she teaches some combat sport, maybe jiu-jitsu or something. And she advised me actually to not engage with the hypotheticals too much, to have physical examples in front of me. Because I would have a physical example in front of me, and then I get this hypothetical, and then I'm trying to think and picture that hypothetical and give it.
It's so hard in leagues.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
And there are a lot of people, by the way, that struggle to visualize things in League of Legends. That's actually one of my flaws. I always took it for granted, and I think it's because we've been in so many situations and played the game for so long. We can visualize. Okay, I'll give you a great example. I always say something like, I say this often where, for example, if you don't die here and you get to this item, the game is free, right? If you just survive this gank. And then they hear me say that, and they're like, Curtis, I'm struggling to understand how not dying here would put you in a good situation.
Yeah,
because I'm playing it out of my mind. You don't die here, that gets you to this item, and then you're just going to win the next team fight. Yeah. But they can't, you know what I mean? Like, it's so easy to jump forward in our brain and visualize what the game, because we can see very, very clearly.
It's like the chess moves, what's happening next. It's like
we kind of know how a game is going to play out from that point, very somewhat accurately. Yeah. And I have to hold myself sometimes and be like, okay, this is specifically why not dying. And that's actually something I've struggled a lot to get across, is that the idea of simply not dying. This is for mid lane specifically. Not dying has been one of the most impact. This has actually probably been this year. I've been pushing that narrative of just the significance of not dying.
Yeah, this is something I really want to explore with you guys. So I think I saw in a clip corner of yourself, Curtis, where you had an example of maybe a Kiana or something that was 3-1, and they took an awkward skirmish. And
this was bot, wasn't it? It was like bot.
I didn't see it. I was just listening to it. But what I wonder is if because I hear a lot of the time you guys emphasizing not dying and being disciplined and doing the right thing, but glossing over getting to a situation where that is the win condition, right? Because maybe, I can't remember if it was a Kiana, let's just say Kiana. Yeah. Maybe that Kiana is a psycho, plays very aggressively, generated that lead through being psychotic. And then you can't just say, be disciplined, because then they'll miss out on those opportunities, right? And then this is like a difference between limit testing and performing to your current limits.
Let's get into the conversation of limit testing. So this is a bit of a hot topic, and I'll be honest, I don't even have the answer. Let's just spitball here. So I've got a Master Plus client right now who plays Aurelia. And talk about classes, I kind of feel like there's a class of mid laners that are kind of like skirmishers, and they love skirmishing. And you've got to know your limits as a skirmisher. That's just a fact, because you don't provide much utility. If you don't know your limits on a champion like Aurelia, and you miss those windows to go, you're just slowly going to lose the game. Whereas if you're playing an Anivia or a Malzahar and you miss that window, it's not really that big of a deal because you're still going to provide plenty of utility in other situations. That is an overgeneralization, but just to plant that seed in there. You do need to know your limits to a much larger degree when you play skirmishes, in my experience coaching, okay? In terms of like the small details. Now, in order to get to that point, to refine your understanding of the damage you can output and what sort of fights you can take, you're going to have to go in and die a lot. You're going to have to send it. You're going to have to put yourself in a wide variety of scenarios. You're going to int. You're going to have a lot of miserable games. But you're going to learn a lot. But there comes a point where you can't continuously play like that because you just don't get anywhere. You don't climb. You don't develop confidence. You don't get anywhere. And now, with this client specifically, we had a session this morning where he did this play where he did a beautiful like tempo reset mid. He come back with TP. I think he was versing I think it was a Kiana that had Ignite or something like that. And the wave was bouncing back to him. And he was in like this beautiful position. Like you could freeze the wave. The enemy couldn't get the wave out. And then he saw the enemy jungler in the river. And instead of just like chilling, letting the wave come out, freezing it, and just like creating this really amazing situation, he tried to like go in and like 2v1. And it was what I deemed to be a low percentage limit test where it's like, what do we really learn from this? Like you already kind of know in your mind that most of the time this isn't going to work. And I kind of deemed it like an 80-20. 80% of the time, this is, you even know intuitively, this is a very risky play and it's very like low percentage. But then later on in the VOD, there was a moment where it was a much higher percentage limit test, and it was like, and basically the way I framed it is like, you've actually assessed all the variables. You're making this decision with intention, and you genuinely believe that it can work. It's not an 80-20. It's like the other way around. It's like a 70-30 where 70% of the time it is going to work.
Yeah.
And what I think been encouraging for him is taking those, still limit testing, but limit testing when the odds are in your favor, kind of in a way. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a line of balance, and what I don't really resonate with this for my support students because so many of them are scared of pushing limits.
Right.
And I think that it might be, maybe I don't have enough of a data size, or maybe just the support role generally attracts players who are more defensively minded. I'm not really sure, but I've almost always, I think I had one client that I needed to ask to
tone back.
Yeah, to tone it down. Right. And it sounds like you ask to tone it back like quite frequently, but for support that doesn't really happen. So it's a tricky one. And performing to your limits, you need to, because every game, like you guys say, is practice and performance, and you need to be able to perform to your limits, and you need to be able to assess where those limits are and build from there. And so another thing that we can kind of spin off with this is, like, for myself, I'm very, very aggressive. I'm almost constantly in limit test mode, and maybe how that feels on the Rift for you guys when I'm in your games, maybe especially Nathan, I think, is I can stomp bot and create a win con, but in the mid to late, I can have a completely unnecessary death and just make the game hard for no reason.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I'm in games with you guys, I feel like, don't take this the wrong way, but like in skirmishes, I don't have the most confidence that you are going to perform it really well, because maybe there's just a little bit more of an element of defense, of playing to current limits than testing those limits. What do you guys feel about that?
Well, I'll say for me and for jungle, it's whenever I say I'm always looking for the most aggressive option. This is how I teach, especially more of my platinum and higher end clients, is always thinking about most aggressive option in terms of enemy jungle showing on the map. Skipping camps to go gank something, playing around like a win condition, like accelerating a win condition. But I will never say the most aggressive option is skirmish. Skirmishes for me are either you're going to win it or not. I'm always looking for numbers advantages to create it.
It feels like you are scared. You're not ready to just jump in blindly and like test your limits.
I want to interrupt here because I've got I feel like I can add a lot of value to this conversation because I feel like I've changed very recently. So I realized I had a problem with my skirmishing in the last, it was actually when the LPL was on. I was watching a lot of LPL and I spoke a bit about this, I think on the podcast, where I got inspired by the LPL. I realized I was too defensive in my skirmishing. And what I mean by that specifically is that there were moments where I would hesitate, and you just got to fight with the intention. You just got to go. You just got to go.
Trade some damage.
You just got to go. Like you can catch people off guard, and if you're busy waiting for that perfect angle, it's too easy to anticipate.
Yeah.
And so what I realized in the last probably 3 weeks is that I was playing like a bit of a bitch. And so my skirmishing, what I did, I sent it. I actually showed you some clips, right? I showed Nathan clips like the day or the week, that week of solo queue. And even Nathan was like, wow, yeah, this is like game-winning shit. And that's stuff these are plays that I wouldn't have made like
You're sitting back waiting for them to make mistakes versus making things.
Versus trying to, again, an example of this.
That's different though, Curtis. That's not the way that I'm interpreting Andy's question.
No,
but that's aggressive decision making. I love aggressive decision making. That was like,
but
I'm
even
not going mid-wave, I'm going bot.
But I'm even talking in the skirmishes. Like,
that's a numbers advantage you're creating.
Well, like if you take the skill check, are you going to cut out the head?
Yeah, stuff like that. Like, I'm more willing to kind of send it in that sense than I was in the past, both in terms of macro and micro.
Okay. Because those examples we talked about, they were more macro.
They were still more macro, but they were
stage 2 stuff.
But that's also manifested in my stage 1 stuff as well. And I feel as though I kind of feel as though certain servers you have to kind of bring it out of yourself in those, I kind of feel like.
Oh, yeah.
You got to really get uncomfortable because no one's going to make you uncomfortable in that. You got to really force yourself to be like that. I feel like when I actually have a client in the Chinese server.
Wow.
And they are all like that. Like, that is the standard. The standard is they are all playing like that level and that aggressive. Like, they're not afraid to trade their life and deal damage and die. And it's kind of embedded in their server. I don't really have the answer as to why. That's just the fact. And that's even in Platinum.
And I think that all leads to higher limits. And
that's
to add a little bit more context, like if one of you two have a lead, it's a free win for me. I know you're going to play beautiful League of Legends. You're going to close it out. But in those tight skirmishes, in that 3v3, like I can feel the hesitation.
Yeah.
I can feel the body.
I feel you just got
to commit.
You got to just commit. And that is the difference, by the way. And that actually is for me when I verse like the top mid laners on our server, like you watch Daystar and like Keysay and stuff. They don't have that hesitation. They're psychos. They're going to go. And they will into scenarios on this, but they are better skirmishers overall.
I actually have a word for this. I call it coach's syndrome. Because you're so much thinking big picture about the game all the time. Well, just for me personally, and just I guess the nature of the jungle position, you don't really limit test that much because you only have so many times to fight, right?
I think it might be personality though, because I very often emphasize testing limits and being a psycho, and I think it's great for long-term success. You need to push the boundaries to expand into.
But I do think that's your personality specifically because I've always felt like you've been very long-term focused. Like that's just you, since I've known you, you've been very thinking process and long term. Like you think about not what I need to do now, what do I need to do in the future, and what's going to lead to the future. So you've never been afraid to limit test because you know that that's going to lead to a higher level of play. But that's not common, right? Like I would say that's uncommon.
Sure. Yeah. No. I'm glad we landed on the personality topic because I believe it is like personality of like between us the differences that maybe you guys are more inclined for that slow, controlled, disciplined, and then I do have a tendency to emphasize the psychotic fighting.
I guess it's easier to review that way. My style, right?
Yeah, it is
because if I'm trying to get a takeaway for a client, it's like, okay, why couldn't we close out this game? And I think, okay, well, let's think big picture here. You have Baron, but you're only playing 1 lane versus 2 lanes. Like that's what I'm talking about in the review, right? That's like my little nice little neat notes, and that's
but I do think Nathan, that way of thinking is actually a really reliable way to get to a particular.
That's where you start.
No, but I think honestly, the way you teach, like you could get someone very reliably to like mid to low master, like playing that way. But you won't climb past that playing that way, you know?
Not, no.
And like that's where the limit testing thing has to really come into play. And I've actually found that with my coaching, sometimes like that is one of my weaknesses as well.
Nathan, why don't you limit test?
Why don't I limit test? Charles just asked. I just don't like playing the game that way. I have a very, very narrow view of how jungle should be playing, and it's reflected in my coaching. Again, like my cap at like low master tier. I'm happy with that.
I think it's like playing in games with you, it's a noticeable element in your games to work on, and if you tackled it, you could.
Oh, absolutely.
Really
That's my next step. I'm well aware of
No,
it.
but Nathan is the like when it's so interesting when we talk about this because when we verse each other, I know like what to expect and what your strengths and weaknesses are. Like you're spot on. Like Andy, you'll make the game really hard to win. Like when you're ahead, and your pressure is like unbelievably like I can feel your pressure all the time, right? But you do have those moments of like, what is he doing? And like, you'll just give me you like lose a game because you're just doing dumb shit. Like I remember I versed you not too long ago, and like I really come back in a game because you just died. And
I probably just got caught on weak side, like limit test, like waving my dick over like a wall. You know, on weak side, like I don't want you to clear this pink. I died. I get Baron.
That's right. And I also think here that certain like personality types do better into certain players. Like I feel as though, you know, talking from a mid perspective, I will always beat the players that play conservative versus me because I just do that style better. But then when I verse someone like a Daystar, sometimes I'll struggle because they're so. It's like, what are they doing? They should get punished for this type thing.
Oh yeah, that feeling.
That feeling, yeah.
That's the feeling that everyone had versus the Direwolves, by the way, especially in 2017. Like, what is Fantix? What is Chippy's doing? How can they get away with this? They're just being psychos. Why aren't they getting punished? But then, if you adopt that mentality and you embrace it and you do that dance with them, then you know you kind of have to beat them at their own game.
You do. You have to adapt to the way they're playing. That's right. But like with Nathan though, when Nathan gets ahead, he can strangle you in the game.
Yep.
Like I feel very strangled when Nathan gets ahead. It's like I know that he's always thinking about like shutting down our move. Like when Nathan's very good at neutralizing the opponent. Like he'll get a wink on and then he'll like counter gank some bullshit. Like he's really good at I always feel like Nathan will counter gank something. Like he's very good at being in the right place at the right time. That's why I always have to respect Nathan could be here. Because I know he's thinking about what I want to do. I feel that. Like I feel that. But then he'll go to a skirmish, and if I know where Nathan is, I know he's going to do some dumb shit.
And this is something you guys will need to like. If you ever go to boot camp in Korea, this is going to be a big issue.
Yeah, for sure.
You're going to need to like really reflect on like how to approach.
I'm excited.
So I'm going to China in end of July. I'm going to get Super Server account. So I'm going to see if I can get some games in while I'm there. Just feel out what it's like over in China.
Yeah, that era of the podcast will be very interesting.
Yeah, so what I'm going to try and do is stream all my games so I have the VOD saved or something. Yeah. So then I can like look at it
that would be
later.
Cool. Because like I know you guys will be able to adapt and rise to the challenge. You know, that's how you are a consistent challenger player. It's just about it's going to be a shock, I think, from going from host and being conservative to your team being completely psychotic and you need to keep up the pace.
Yeah, and I actually, funnily enough, when I was doing shout out to Arasaka, he's now he's in Diamond. I've actually got him to Diamond in the Chinese server. And he, doing his VODs, I realized my approach of coaching was wrong. With him, specifically, I had to adapt what I look for. And I'm like, because, okay, number one, every game, they will level 1 fight in China, in his server. Every game, you have to be there. No matter how much you ping, they're gonna. So and what happened? He actually was playing Akali, and we realized Akali doesn't work. You're too slow. So he shifted his champion to Akshan, and he plays Akshan, shoves the wave and move. And
another extreme from one extreme to the other.
And what happened? And I'm like, there's no way this shit should work. But they just don't respect. You will get that roam off every time. Because they don't respect.
It's a mentality, right? They're not thinking about the highest percentage plays. They just do it. I had a recent thought about it. I don't know if it's going to resonate at all with you guys, but let's imagine, you know, you're in a car and you're driving to see your friend and there's no rush. But like you get a little bit angsty when someone's driving slow behind you, even though it's going to cut off like 5-10 seconds. But like it's just that you're in that mode of efficiency of like doing. Or like if you're approaching a traffic light, and you know the light's red, but you're still a little bit annoyed if someone slows you down at all or anything, even if it's not going to impact the results of where you want to get to. It's kind of like you approach a game of League of Legends as a psycho. It's just that mentality in the long run is going to lead to you having insane limits knowledge, even if the results in those individual games are going to be awkward.
I've actually thought though that like the level of play from a macro perspective is straight up worse. right?
100%.
It's 100% worse.
100%.
Like when I watch even the high elo, but they like from a strategic perspective, they are objectively worse.
I agree.
But the micro and skirmishing is objectively way better. It is just a different type of league.
And
I
it's
think it just goes back to their limit testing all the time. So as Andy said, that's the fastest way to learn the game.
Yeah, maybe.
Fastest way to learn how to skirmish
Yes,
better, which
that's
is
right.
what the game is.
And
Which is the way the game's evolving.
yeah.
That's right.
and they never turn it off. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It never turned off.
Yeah, and it's the pace of game. This is something that I've been talking about more and more, especially in my YouTube videos, is to pay attention to your games, to your pace of game, what is happening, and to be able to adapt, right?
Mm.
Let's say you're in an elo where it's not clear if it's going to be fast or slow. Let's say like around platinum, you know, are your games ending before 20, 25 minutes? Do you feel like you just need to keep up? Or are the games going to this late game team fights, everyone's just organized in A-Rand and you just need to scale, you know? And if you pay attention to that and you adapt, then that's a really good skill to develop.
Yeah, and I always say this, you know, you got to adapt to what works in your elo, in your server. When you watch a VOD and you're watching, let's say, a Yatoro player, and they're watching, or actually, let's use a Chinese example. So everyone loves watching Jalaban, the Echo player in China, or Mango Fish Fizz. Those games are just not what the average player is going to experience. If you're a platinum Fizz main in NA, and you're watching Mango Fish playing Chinese Super Server, these aren't even, one's bloody Fortnite and one's another game. These are not even the same games. The only thing, what did I say? You can only take away ability usage and some skirmish optimization. The way the lanes play out is completely different. And I've actually observed this. What they do in China is that both junglers just come in. So they see Fizz mid versus whatever. Fizz is able to play incredibly fast and aggressive and queue off repeat because their jungler is hovering the Fizz to allow that. In NA and Platinum and P4, the jungler is not hovering there. They're full clearing, and then you're forced to but you can't go for this because you have no vision and the jungler's not hovering you. So you have to adapt the way you play your champ based off the server and the rank. It's just the reality.
Yeah, I agree. You're left to your own devices and slower servers and slower elos.
That's right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
you can still learn shit. You just got to be intentional with how you learn.
What is your definition of a slow game, by the way? What does a slow game look like in your mind?
I would just say that the outcome of the game is not from snowballing. It's from like a late game kind of team fight, like a mid to late game team fight. Who, 30 plus, 35 plus minutes, where it just feels like it's about scaling and not snowballing. I don't really have a clear definition, but I've never had an issue in any of my games discerning between a snowbally or a scaling game.
I mean, it's usually about kills, right? If there's 30 kills in 15 minutes, you feel like it's a faster paced game.
It's just a feeling. I wish I could articulate it better, but like objectives are just being taken very quickly and the map's getting squeezed and suffocated. There's no space.
For a jungler,
things, right? It's objectives, towers, and kills, right?
I think from a jungler's perspective, it's about people heavy trading in lane or not. If everyone's full HP with all summoner spells, it's very difficult to do things as a jungler. So you're more so going to be clearing camps and full clearing, and then I guess playing off priority.
But sometimes, but surely there are some games, right, where there's not much volatility, but then there's like a rent. Then Rift Herald spawns, and then everyone groups from Rift, and then they get Rift, and then the game explodes. Can't there be that as well?
Yeah, that can happen, but junglers are going to be very hesitant to, if no one's showing on the map, you're not just going to start the Herald, and the lanes are like not trading. You got to Cassidy versus Zillion mid, and they're just like, you know what I mean? So
The way that I see this is like personally, I accelerate game paces. I feel one way or another, and
if you're a laner, you have a lot of control for the game,
especially support. You can be a second jungler. You can roam around and accelerate. But I see like servers and elos being like distinct differences between game pace, and I think the lower elo you are, the slower it is. You want to play mages in low elo as a support, so because you can actually do damage and get those really expensive items, and people don't really know how to
That's
play.
why Aurelion Soul is like the ultimate low elo. If you play ASO and you're like silver and stuff, bronze, like you're gonna kill it.
Yeah, and it's pace of game, right? You're allowed to just hit 300 stacks and 5 items.
One shot people in mid game.
And it's going to be elo. Oh, sorry, not elo. It's going to be region as well, like where the eastern regions are fast. Not necessarily just in Masters Plus, but like even like throughout Plat, like you said.
Yeah, I was shocked actually how fast Platinum was in China. like incredibly shocked. Like low plat.
Yeah.
P4.
And I guess the other thing for pace of the game is also if you do something, how hard are you getting punished for doing it? Especially as a jungler. If I'm showing one side of the map, if I'm not getting punished for it, then it's sort of like an easier game pace.
Yeah, you can make more decisions. There's less pressure on those decisions.
That's right.
You're going to have another 5 shots. You can
That's right. You got plenty of shots. That's right. Versus I have this one shot. If I mess it up, it's going to be difficult.
It's interesting. It's kind of what makes Korea interesting, right? Because like you watch LPL and you watch LCK, and like the way those games play out are very different. LCK is very slow and controlled, and LPL is like just crazy, right?
I don't know how they do it. It's like complete polar opposites. And solo queue is so fast in Korea, and then on stage it's like
It's
incredible.
0-0.
It's insane.
It's strange, right? It's
Yeah.
strange, and it's interesting. That's why I'm so excited to see like the best Korean team versus the best Chinese team, right? It's like how are they gonna? I'll be interested to see if LPL can play a slower style, like what that would look like. You know, are they gonna get uncomfortable, or LCK or the Koreans get dragged into the
I think
mud?
they'll be fine, dude.
And what would that look like?
It'll be fine. They'll get to the team fight and they'll just force you to fight, and then
The Chinese teams will take those fights and they'll be so confident and they'll execute it very well.
This team fighting in the LPL, just like even if you don't follow esports, you just want to watch League of Legends, like LPL team fighting, just watching a team fight, LPL highlights is just so entertaining. Like you don't even have to understand what's going on; it's just entertaining, and you can see and respect the execution there. Like it's on another level. It's on a complete another level, isn't it? So fun to watch.
All right, Andy, do you have any topics on your little notepad that we should cover
Let
up?
me have a look.
Just a bit of a scan.
We've talked about coaching low elo.
Yep, we learned lots of things there. Very interesting to hear
A
about.
little bit about my coaching evolution, maybe. I think
Yes.
you mentioned that at the start.
Yes.
But we didn't.
Because Curtis and I, we evolve and we talk about lots of topics about
Yeah.
our findings, our clients. So what have you sort of noticed?
Yeah.
Where have you shifted your attention to? Because I mean, I always go in phases, especially on the podcast. Like right now, I'm in the champ mastery phase. Like
Yes.
I'm working on all my champions for my lower elo players, and like even in my solo queue, like I'm not really pushing myself in solo queue. I'm barely playing the game. I'm not playing high elo fights. Like I'm just thinking about how to teach the game, reference points. That's my focus right now, and then maybe I'll go have another focus later. Like I also as well focus on sort of different parts of my programs as well. Like again, like if I start getting like really into my diamond plus reviews, then I'll be talking about more at those points. So yeah. Where's your attention right now?
I would say I'm in a different position in my coaching journey, which probably makes sense given I've been doing this not as long, and I'm not necessarily bouncing between different areas of focus. I'm finding those areas of focus and feeling them out. And so what is the most fresh in my mind right now is I just stumbled upon really emphasizing being a psycho, testing limits, being really aggressive in the early game, and then in the mid to late game, I am emphasizing discipline. And I don't know why, but it's so important.
It
I
feels
can feel
important.
So what do you mean by discipline?
do the right things, tick the boxes, understand, don't test the limits, and just collect the free wins.
Just staying alive, right?
Yeah, and I think that the gravity of death in the mid to late game is, objectively much higher.
Yes.
And I just feel that.
Well, actually, backtrack on that. I don't know if I agree with
that. That's maybe it's rolled different,
Right.
But
That's what you're sensing in your clients.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm
Isn't
not
it
sure,
deaths are bad in all stages of the game?
No. It's not,
They have
it's not
different
about
impacts.
that. I think it's about the feeling, like the second-hand feeling I get through my students that they feel pressured to do something and then they're throwing away the game. And so they're on the other end of the spectrum between testing.
Okay, so got it. So because you mentioned before that the nature of the clients and everything, like they're too passive in the early game, and then they're ridiculously losing the game in the late game. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So you've got the opposite approaches.
I think it's because I preach so much about testing limits that they kind of bring that positioning and mindset to the mid to late, and then they're overshooting it for the mid to late, and we need to bring it back and have that go.
Yeah, because support's an interesting role. I actually feel that where in a way, you're doing less in the mid to late game, right? You need to be very controlled. It's more vision focused. There's less, there will be windows, but there's less of them.
Yeah.
Is that right? Is that what you mean?
You can absolutely solo carry a game in the early game, but you're on a timer. You don't get gold, you don't get XP, and so it's going to shift to more of a facilitative role.
And when the map opens up, there's less kind of like visions everywhere in a mid game, it can be a little bit harder, is what you're saying? Or?
Yeah, I still need to reflect on this more. I'm not sure why it just clicks so cleanly in my mind that my students have to focus on discipline in the mid to late. And just the issues have come up too much where there's a game-losing error. And this is something I don't even talk about in the early game. I don't talk about game-losing errors. I don't resonate with the end of review process, you know?
Yeah, we talked about that last episode.
Yeah. But just in the mid to late, that's something that I need to explore a little bit more.
Do you find that when you're teaching that, so I have a concept called red light, green light that I've talked before on the podcast, where it's really based on your teammates' bases. Like a lot of people go for a play in the mid game when their mid laners in base, and then the enemy team push a side lane and they have a roam or something like that. And you have opportunities. You either cross the road or you can't cross the road.
100%.
And this has helped a lot in terms of structuring mid games. And whenever someone comes to a review and say, Nathan, I have mid game problems, it's really sort of simple. I have a huge focus on the early game in my coaching because it's really structured. It's like, okay, can I make a play or not? Numbers advantages are created very easily in mid-game, late game. Supports will ruin games. Junglers ruin games all the time in mid-game, late game.
Everyone ruins games.
I'd say junglers are very, very good at doing that.
Yeah, junglers are good though.
And then other than that, then you just play into your champ identity and fights and then thinking about how your comp is a front-to-back thing. So I don't really need to go too much over. I gloss over mid-late game stuff a lot. I think
interesting. Yeah, no, on that green light, red light thing, what I talk about a lot is being on map at the same time as your jungler. And so my two main points in the mid to late game for a support is mid first, and what mid first means is prioritizing mid shot.
That's structured.
I think we've all kind of realized the significance of that. That's really important.
So I do mid first and I do pressure with jungle. And so if you can't reliably create a source of pressure on the map if you're away from the jungler. Your jungler is doing camps, chill out. Your jungler's on top side, you should be top side as well. Don't try to make a play, not always, but typically don't make a play on the opposite side. And so you're just looking to sync up pressure with your jungle, control mid, and then of course it's going to be team fight execution. But like having that structure and following those, having discipline on those fronts is very, very important.
There's so much chaos. The adaptation, it's so easy to hear that in theory, but the amount of things and your teammates getting caught and that sort of stuff, like it's pretty chaotic in solo queue.
Yeah, I think maybe this is...
So you get distracted.
This might go back to the complexity of our roles potentially. We talked about this a little bit last time when we decided that support probably has a little bit less complexity than the other roles, but I haven't really struggled to emphasize pressuring with jungle and mid first, except in fast game paces. I mean, you're not going to run mid and shove midway when there's a skirmish happening nearby or when someone is overextended on a side lane, right? So what I say normally is if nothing else pressing is happening, then you're doing mid first, you're pressuring with your jungler. You're comfortable with a slow game pace. You're going to outplay your opponents on a fundamental and on a macro level. But if there's a lot of fighting, if there's a high tempo, a lot of chaos, you rise to the occasion. You don't back away from it, you embrace it.
So the complexity is really simple. For jungle, we're addicted to camps. Support doesn't have anything to do, right? You're going to be pretty much winning every fight. We always addicted to camps. How many times have I seen? I think we did a Curtis's clips where he was so far ahead as Eve, and his numbers
that Baron as well.
Yeah, that Baron. They're like up 15,000 gold, and he's doing his Gromp when he could be ending the game. Right? You know what I mean? And then as a mid laner, going to side lanes instead of gripping the team. So those are the difference. You got to have those options.
But it's interesting. I've come like you guys are talking about like syncing bases and all that stuff. From a mid lane perspective, I always seem to be saying the same things in mid game, two kind of things. I am absolutely obsessed with LoL state usage. Right, LoL state usage.
So thinking about.
Well, just like...
Where to be.
Yeah, but what I say specifically, I said the number one thing, right? You can be bad at everything else in mid-game, but if you're simply aware of your teammate's location, that one thing, that will save you so many mid-games. I always say it. You need to, like it's more important than knowing where the enemy is. You don't even need to know where the enemy is. You just need to know where your team is. If your team...
That's red light, green light.
Yeah, exactly. We've all intuited that in a different way. For me, it's just like, where the fuck is your team?
Yeah.
What are they doing? Where are they? If you don't know that information, then how do you know what to do?
That's like the step one information.
That's step one. Where is my team? What are they doing now? And that's going to dictate, do I go to the side? Can I reset? Do I need to go straight to the fight? That is everything. That is the foundation of mid-game.
Whether you need to conceive an objective and go do something else.
and you guys talk about lull stage, but you think of the support in the mid to late game, like your entire mid to late is pretty much a lull stage.
Yeah,
It's a lull stage.
Because you're not interacting really with anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to be more inclined because the game's like, it's boring. I just want to engage on it, right? You're more inclined to lose a game.
But I do think that, what you've probably been intuiting, and I could be completely wrong here with your mid game, it could be that, especially in the lower elo, actually in all elo brackets, people are very good at going in when they shouldn't and just losing a game. So if you simply stay disciplined, an opportunity will present itself a lot of the time. Like if you are just simply more disciplined than the opponent, you have the information. I know where my team is, where's my jungler, and you stick to those kind of like basics of like mid shove and that. And usually an opportunity will present itself because the enemy is going to make a mistake.
Yeah,
Is that kind of a part of it?
I think something that might be happening is, at least for me, maybe for you guys as well, there might be a bit of like recency bias in a way. Like you see a mid to late game error happen and the game loses, you're like, oh shit, I messed up there, that sucks. But like at the end of the day, you still need to learn when an engage is bad or not and how you're going to do that, right? By engaging badly and learning from it.
Yep.
And so that's, I'm still not quite sure.
It's tricky, isn't it? It's
That's
really
what it
tricky.
is.
It really does come down to you do need to limit test, but you don't want to limit test all the time.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to use another example from school support here. So Yag, great guy, D2, D1. I think he's, D1 for the first time, and we've worked a lot on early game and on mid to late game. And I really wanted, because he has such like fantastic knowledge of concepts, and I want him to be able to translate that into results, right? And we were falling upon the hurdles in the mid to late game of being disciplined and doing the right thing, and that's going to help him, climb for sure. But it just hasn't really felt like the issue in winning any of his games has been limit testing in the mid to late game. And I've never really talked about, you just need to limit test and you need to. It's so tricky. Like it can really go both ways the whole time. It's just. Yeah.
Or the way I'm talking about it at the moment, Andy, is we go through phases. So you do, what I say is that you go through a limit testing phase of a particular amount of games where you need to actively limit test to find your limits and get uncomfortable. Then we rein it in, and then we go conservative mode, where it's the expression of what we know. And then you do that for a little bit, and then you just go back and forth. It's like a phase you go through. And I've actually, this is actually not bullshit because I experienced this in my solo queue. When I feel as though I'm genuinely, like I'm just steadily climbing, I'm not going to limit test. I'm just going to play, and I'm going to just take conservative plays. And then when I feel like I'm plateaued and I'm getting gapped,
Then you go more.
then I need a limit test because I know something's wrong. So I know that if I play this way and I'm losing, there's something wrong. Like if I'm sitting at the same rank playing the very similar League of Legends, I know that I need to limit test.
Switch it up.
I need to switch it up.
Yeah.
You know?
I personally have never, I can see encouraging students to do that. I'm not sure about low versus high elo. Maybe in the high elo it's going to be a little bit different, but personally I've never had phases. I'm just,
Right.
I feel like I'm always in the same phase of be quite aggressive.
What's the most
very
impressive thing I can do? You're always thinking about that.
Now, I'm always scared recommending that though because people can get very easily beat down by the lack of results. Sometimes I want someone just to get a bit of elo.
And I think this is the students that we typically come across because your students, or a lot more of your students, overshoot that line.
Right,
And my
right.
students don't overshoot that
Because
line.
support is typically, the personalities typically are a little bit more passive.
That's my theory. Only one player in the history of my coaching I needed to rein it back.
Well, I think it makes sense, right? Because the role itself is called support. You are not really doing damage as
It's
much.
going to incline those people.
It's more utility based. It's going to attract more of those players, right? I mean, if you're playing Mage's bot lane and trying to be a carry, why not just play mid, dude? Why? Genuinely, that's a really great question. If you want to do damage and kill shit as Vel'Koz, play mid. What are you doing?
I agree.
To take his clients.
No, but the same even goes for mid. If you want to sit there and play Karma mid, or something like, or Seraphine mid, then maybe you want to play support.
If you want results, leave school support, join mid lane.
All right, all brand players, all Vel'Koz players. There you go.
We'll shift some of them back. The Seraphine players and the Karma mids, etc. Go.
That's true. We can handball across here.
Transfer.
The supportive mids and the.
Pay transfer fee, and then I'll pay you a transfer fee.
So another point that I wanted to talk about, we briefly mentioned it at the start off camera, and it was about like finding the transition from early game to mid to late. And this is part of my coaching evolution. I don't know when, and I know that I'm misassessing when to do it. I am transitioning from early game reviews to mid to late game reviews too late. I feel like I need to give my students a blueprint for the mid to late game a bit earlier, but I really want to feel like they have a solid foundation with their early game. And what does that look like? You know, if they're let's say they're a gold player and they're not going to have a solid early game until they're diamond. And so when do we make that jump towards the mid to late?
You want to start with this one, Nathan?
Okay, so what I have in my resources section of my Salto Academy, I have a structured game plan for a lot of my champions are pretty similar of like start top, full clear towards bot. Something's going to happen. You're probably going to pass the opposite side of the jungler because enemy junglers always start bot side in lower elo. So you're always opposite ends. You're always going to full clear off and you're going to reset and you're going to do some camps and you're going to assess after. So the early game sort of I've structured. That's a jungle luxury.
So you give them the structure, but when do you move on to later structures? Because if they haven't integrated that into their muscle memory, then you want to make sure that they're showing results, right? That you want to see improvement on these structures.
So your question is more so when do I know to
so we're all going to have structures, but when do you move on from your early structures to the later structures?
I mean, I'm always focused on the early because I mean, I didn't go into an end of review process for me, right? What I want to see junglers doing is that. I mean, junglers at the end of the day, we're going to have the most influence in the earlier stages of the game, right? Even if you're scaling jungle, because I need to minimize the enemy jungler's damage so I can scale up and then win those mid to late game fights. So I need to see people, okay, understand why your laners are dying here. This wave state, counter jungle is opportunities. So it's always, there's never someone that I've ever had that's always like, okay, we've got the early game down, now we're going to be learning the mid game.
It doesn't matter. Jungle's so unique though.
It's always early game.
That's so unique.
Yeah, I want to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I've got a very
with laners, it's like a much more noticeable jump between early and mid, like between laning phase, which jungle doesn't have, and between.
All right.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I've got a few. Okay, so I'll be honest, I don't really have a written down, but I have a way of doing it. Okay. So basically, when I do every session, I ask them a set of questions, kind of like, and so I'll say, okay, what's going on? Do you feel as though you're plateaued? What's been going on in your journey? So I'll get a bit of a lay of the land, right?
What about new students?
Yeah, I'll also ask them, like, what's been going on? Like, and I even ask about the champ pool, because sometimes I'll get a client and they have no champ mastery, right? It's like, I'm not going to touch the big game if they have no champ mastery, right? So once I figure out they've got champ mastery, and once I've established that they've got, the next question I ask is, okay, what are you seeing in the majority of your games? Are you struggling in the early game? Or do you feel like your early lanes are actually pretty solid and you're getting into the mid game, right? So now, I'm not going to blindly listen to that answer and be like, yes, we're going to go in the mid game. But what I'll say, I'll take that in mind. I'll keep that in the back of my mind. Okay, this player thinks that their early game is consistent and that they have mid game problems. But then I'll get into the review. Now, based off what I see by the quality of their early game, the quality of their intention, their fundamentals, the quality of their matchup understanding, whatever I see, then that will dictate what I focus on, okay? So then let's say I get into the early lane, and there are players like this where they actually have a pretty solid early game. They've actually worked on their gen master, their matchups, like they've got good fundamentals, and it's not perfect, but it's pretty bloody solid. Like, okay, we'll take a look at the mid game, and then, it's not like I will be like, okay, we're only going to focus on the mid game. Maybe I'll just pick one thing from the mid game that we can take away, and then I'll give them maybe an early game thing as well. Like, there are some clients where I'll give them a bit of both. Then there are some clients I'll give only mid to late game stuff, and then there are some clients who will say, okay, you're actually completely wrong. You're delusional. Your early game is actually trash. I won't say it like that, but like,
we've got some work here.
We've got a lot of work here to do. You're not ready to move on to the mid game, and then I'll go back to the early game.
Yeah.
So it's very free flowing. I feel out the clients,
Yeah, I can totally resonate with that. And the thing I don't resonate with is like a new student. When they come in, you need to focus on the early game. So like a long-term student, I'll be happy asking, what feels like is going wrong in your games, and we can have a look at that. But if I want to kind of put a new student on a conveyor belt to improvement, we need to start early, and I don't know when to move to the mid to late, if that makes sense.
Well, again, it really do. You got to, when you do your next review with them, so you have your first one, first session with a new client, you'll probably, like you said, likely work on the early game. The next session, it's like, well, what's going on? What have they internalized? Because you're going to get a wide variety of clients. You're going to get clients that play 30 games a week and are very good students and can internalize shit very quickly. Then you're going to get clients that work 5 days a week, 6 days a week. They're getting 2 games a night. They're barely getting 15, 14 games a week. Their improvement is very, very slow. They might be working on early game fundamentals for months.
Yep.
And that's okay, right?
Yeah,
That's okay.
absolutely.
Sometimes I
Because
feel
you gotta
like,
remember-
Yeah, dude. There's not like remember league improvement. It's not like there's okay. I attend a coaching session now. I've got it all. I have to come back and revisit things.
Dude, you're
and
gonna get
things
clients-
chipped away.
Everyone improves at differing levels. It's not like remember, you got to realize that not everyone's trying to go pro or whatever. You know what I mean? Like most people, this is a casual hobby, and they're going to improve at different levels. You're going to get the working professional who takes the job very seriously. They get, like I said, 2 games a night, and they're just going to be moving in a direction very slowly, and they're okay with that.
Yeah, the last thing I want to say on this topic is because my mid to late blueprint isn't that complex, I feel like just having a brief covering
Yes.
of that at some stage is going to help so much.
That's
so
so. I've
much
made
effort.
this mistake, Andy. So you're absolutely. I've made mistakes with clients in the past where I've actually overemphasized the early game, and the early game got to a point where it was like ridiculously good, but the mid game was like atrocious, and that actually ruined them. And I've got clients. I'm going to say his name, Liquid Envy. I think I fucked up with him because I think I emphasized the early game too much, and then like his mid to late game was atrocious. And, I openly said, I probably fucked up here a bit, but I've learned from that. I think with some clients, I've got to be like, okay, we've got your early game to a somewhat solid level. We need to now look at your mid game so at least it's not atrocious and get some basics like, okay, mid jump is important. When to basically group and split, like basic concepts that aren't going to take too much time to ingest.
Yeah, because you can feel like you don't have to invest much time at all for such a huge impact
Yes,
on the results.
it's like
of the
1 or 2 things that you need to know in mid game that will make a massive difference. Yeah, 100%.
So maybe the idea is that you have the more general advice for the mid late game stuff, and then early game you get really into the details.
But
That's what it is. I love early games.
Well, the whole,
Same.
well, I think me and
I think
you
I'm
differ
also-
still, though.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you've changed. You told me off camera like that. You go more into the mid game now than you used to,
Yes.
right? And that's the same for me.
And again, that's more in terms of champ mastery fighting stuff more so.
right,
Because you only have a couple of windows for fighting as a jungler.
right. But at least for me, I found myself. I will see like an end of review mistake sometimes, but I will, out of interest, just keep going forward,
Okay, I do that.
just to
as well,
kind of
yeah.
see what's going
Yeah,
on.
so the way that I sort of structure it is that, okay, cool, end of review early game, and then I'll like, okay, let's now look at your team fighting with this champion.
yeah.
And then I go straight to this mid
That's
game
right.
and skip stuff.
Yeah, I totally resonate
And
with that,
your
Andy.
best.
Though there are I think very minor things that can go a very long way in mid game. That I have made that mistake in some of my coaching clients.
Yeah.
100%. But it's an interesting one. That's why you got to feel out every client, though. That's the beauty of coaching. That's it.
I've got another point here. I learned to get better at stopping and just saying like, this is as much as we're going to get out of this session. And sometimes it's like 5 minutes, and I'm like, man, really? But it's just something that I've kind of had to learn to do. Like we're on the same page with what the learning objectives are. I know you know that you need to put in the reps. Put in the reps. I'm not mad at you. This is the end of the review, So that's something that I've struggled with. I used to ramble on a lot, and I'm like, this is important, but I'm still going to have a look at other things. But it's like, no, cut it there. Here you go.
Yeah, I love that. I learned that as well over time as well. I mean, my review time is significantly continuing to reduce because I want to get short, sharp learning. Everyone says, how do you review? How do you review? The human brain, we're not very sophisticated. We only get 1 or 2 things that are actually going to stick, even just one thing from a game. You're going to review, I don't care how good or bad your review process is, just try and figure out one thing.
Yeah, it just kind of feels bad because, like, typically
just
a
gotta accept
coaching session is like an hour.
Yeah, that's
No,
what
like,
that's the
that's
standard in
bullshit.
league in the community. We don't care about that.
That's
Yeah,
bullshit.
yeah.
It's what you're feeling there is that there is this stigma attached to coaching that has been around for a long time. That coaching session, you purchase an hour coaching, and then that's bullshit. That's old.
My 5-minute reviews are sometimes my best review.
If any
Bam, can't combo is Wukong. I was on that for 30 games. Like, that's it.
It's true though.
Yeah.
Like if any no single review should ever ever go for an hour unless you're talking about like psychological mindset
Or like
shit
the
and schedule and
big
process,
picture,
big
yeah.
picture.
Okay.
That's the only reason.
But to be fair, like in the real world, playing piano or getting a tennis lesson, they're all 1 hour. You're not going to be paying for like 5 minutes.
I would say it's more so Curtis and I's programs, because we continually work with the same students over and over again. I want to expose them to as many situations, problem solve, apply the principles in Soltu to lots of different games, and I want to walk through that in lots of different games. So basically, it's like I view it's more. If I do an hour with someone total over 3 months is like the best way I think to get results.
I'm not arguing at all. I agree it's the best result. It's just like
It can feel shit though.
It feels bad.
But it only feels bad because you think that in your mind, they might think that this is not right. Like
or they're not getting enough value.
they're not getting enough value,
Yeah.
but it's just
Yeah.
it's just one of those things. Like they have to
think-
trust you.
I
This is
have
reality.
people that bring just sometimes just bad games. It's like, okay, there's nothing to learn from this game.
Yeah.
Don't worry about this. Don't overcomplicate this. Keep working on what you're like.
straight
Literally,
up.
like
I should learn to do that more.
Yeah.
This is actually something I've thought about as well, Andy, where let's say I do a review with someone and let's say it was just like they did a shit VOD and there's like maybe one thing we can take away from it. And it goes for like, say, 18 minutes or something like that, right? Or 15 minutes or something. And
these are the type of games I categorize as like the problem that we need to solve, the effort to solve this problem is it's not actually impactful for your journey at all.
Well, it's just like completely different because I've had this recently where I have my learning objectives that I've set as student, and then they bring a game and there's like psychotic level 1, or the game pace is really, really fast, and then the learning objectives from this game is just completely different.
Yeah,
And
you say don't worry about this one.
for now.
Delete this game from your brain. Keep working on
Okay,
it.
so the way to complete what I was going to say before was, okay, let's say one of those clients gets one of those sessions, and let's say they're upset, and let's say they leave the program after a month. In my mind, I don't care, because what's going to happen, and this is why I frame it is, okay, go somewhere else, go to another coach, do what they do, and then what's happened in my experience is they just come back because they don't get results the other way. So I'm so confident in my way of coaching, I don't see it any other
What's
way.
the alternative?
What's the alternative? Yeah, sure. If you don't think this is the right way, go somewhere else, get your limited results, and then a lot of times they end up coming back. So I just think really long term. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here for decades,
Sure,
hopefully, until league dies.
Figuring it out.
So if you feel like there's another coach that has solved it better than me, cool, do that. But I'm very confident in my coaching ability, and if you don't trust me, that's all good. You don't need to be here. That's the way I frame it.
That's the way it works in the Midland Academy.
Yeah, there's plenty of other mid-lane coaches. If you don't resonate with my style, you don't have to be in my program. There's plenty of other mid-lane coaches. But I stand by my philosophy. Nathan stands by his philosophy. And then at the end of the day, what's happened in my experience, most people come back to my program after getting other coaching from other people. So that's it. I think that's the reality.
Nice. Okay, one more point here.
I love how Cupcake's like the host at this point. What's the next topic? What's the next topic at this point? Reading off his little notepad. Usually I have the one with the
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about the balance between like the complexity and the fluidity of the game with a lot of, I know you guys have mentioned this, like small fires popping up everywhere, but also having learning objectives in the background and finding that balance. This is something that I've been struggling with. I have these small fires. Should we go put all of them out and should we disregard general learning objectives more, or should it be the other way around? Should we ignore small fires and focus on those generals?
Well, again, I'll say, speaking for my program, so one of the things in my program is I have a channel called VOD Questions. Okay, so what that is for is, let's say you have a very specific problem. It's like, in this situation, should I have reset or should I have stayed on the map for this? When you have this, like a quote unquote small fire, that's what that thing is for. So they just chucked that, I said, send that time to that very specific thing, and then I'll just answer it. That's it. That's what I do. And then we'll just keep your learning objectives. But like, if you're very curious about something, chuck it in there and we'll just help you out.
And if you notice a small fire in a review that you're doing, how do you approach that?
Like, what's an example of this? Can you give me an example? Give me an example of a learning objective and then a small fire that is opposite or different to that learning objective.
Damn. Small fire could be you aren't placing your wards in the mid to late game in good enough spots. You're just not doing a great job on the vision front, but we're not focusing on that. We're focusing on mid first and
Okay.
pushing with jump.
Yeah, okay, so I've got two things. Number one, sometimes I will say something and I'll say, I'm just going to plant that seed in there. Don't worry about it. I'll literally say, I'm going to plant that seed in
It's
there.
like acknowledging this is something maybe we can tap in later.
This is something, yeah,
but I
I'm just,
still want to bring it back to this.
I can do that too. I'm just worried that they don't move on. They don't move on from it.
right. I think just make it, like, I just try to make it clear. This is like a thing. We're not going to really I'll just say, I'm going to plant that seed in there. Not really important now, but we'll come to that later. That's literally what I'll say, quote,
Yeah.
word by word.
It's funny as coaches, we always try and keep it like structured. We want like this vertical, like at the end of the day, the way that I still view it is the improvement process, review process is super ugly, super messy. The game League of Legends is so complex, so much shit pops up. We're going to go on, I embrace it. Let's go down some rabbit holes that are just like literally not going to be that useful. Like, let's see, maybe we can because you know how we always talk about revisiting old learning objectives? That's always going to pop up. You don't just fix something and it's always fixed forever, right?
Yeah,
So I'm happy to go down, maybe we do some small fires and we get distracted by it for a couple of weeks
I think
and then we
Nathan,
go back to
Nathan,
the
you're really good at just saying, all right, let's just piss away 3 weeks.
This is all time. It's so important. I love it. It's
Let's
important.
just piss away 3 weeks.
Because then it just gets too serious and like
Right.
then the game becomes unfun of like
Yeah, you can get
Too
too rigid
coachy.
way of viewing the
too
game.
coachy. I've actually had
Yeah.
recently, I won't name who it is, but someone
Voldemort.
in someone who's from OS, like one of the pro players, and he's in boot camp in Korea
Oh,
right
yeah,
now.
I know him.
And
Voldemort.
He-
Shut up your name.
he's been challenger in OS, right? And he was playing career and he was struggling in like D3, D4. And he says, Nathan, Hellboy, what's going on? And I said, let's just bring it back to basics, like just kill shit and click close to your character and don't overcomplicate, because I viewed it again, like he's got overcomplicated the game. It's like, oh, I'm in Korea, it's so scary. And then he did that for a couple of days or a week or so, and then he shot up back to master with like a 60, 65. So it's like 200 LP right
So
now.
just doing the right things work then, because what we were talking about before is maybe you need to adjust your approach to the server. But that
He's the opposite.
That wasn't the
He
issue.
said he was playing like he did in OS and he got more results. So he was doing the opposite. He was trying to play.
Trying to adapt.
I guess he was trying to play what career was in his mind.
Rather
People
than
have this
doing
idea
what he's
versus
good at.
League of Legends is League of Legends. I said that to him. League of Legends, League of Legends. I don't care what server it is, especially as a jungler. Like, it's your job to adapt to a heavy trading lane. If there's more so than it is, then just adapt.
Yeah, that's on any server. If there's a heavy trading lane, you go there.
That's right. League of Legends, right? So, yeah. What was the tangent? What was the initial question of talking about small fires?
Well, we're talking about like going on a tangent and then how sometimes you can overcomplicate the game by being too rigid or
That's
something.
right. He overcomplicated the game. He literally had a negative win rate in D3, and now he has 67% win rate, 200 LP in Masters right now in Korea. And that's just, again, just not overcomplicated, bring it back to basics. Curtis and I always say, bring it back to basics, the fundamentals of the game. Click close to your
But again, it's an interesting, it's more nuanced, right, Andy, as well, because it's like, okay, we got to have reference points and learning objectives and stuff. But then, if you're thinking too rigid, like, okay, I'm going to improve on this, and then it's going to that, and then that, and then like it kind of, and don't embrace the chaotic nature of the learning journey. You can sometimes
Yes, yeah, that was my point. Sorry, yeah.
get a little bit too rigid, and rather than just embracing the fun and the chaos and the intuition improvement.
Like I call it coaches syndrome, dude. Like it's
a tricky one.
It's a tricky one. I mean, yeah, we always want to bring order. I like the word I use, order and chaos and all that. But League's a chaotic game. I always view like the improvement process is like it's like a plane crash, man. There is debris everywhere. You don't know what parts. It's just an absolute shit show, and you're gonna love it, dude. Embrace it. It's not like I'm not gonna call. I was gonna say it's not like chess, but I don't never improve with chess. So I don't know.
Shut up about chess. I swear to God.
Shut up about chess. Yeah, I can't analogy because I've never won another hobby or something like that. So yeah, there you go.
No, I
Embrace the chaos.
think it's a lot for me. I mean, this has just kind of been like a coaching for coaching session for me from you guys right now, but
Yeah.
it's also kind of embracing where I am, relatively early in my coaching journey, and just trying to stay really open and figure things out as much as
It's
possible.
try shit, and there's going to be a lot of stuff that's unique to sport players. One thing I will say just on that topic though, I especially with Master Plus clients, I talk about it in terms of solving 1,000 puzzles. So I view it as like, okay, usually by the time you're master, you don't have huge flaws in your gameplay anymore. Like you typically understand the game pretty well. You understand the fundamentals. So what I say, the way to visualize the learning journey is that you're going to put yourself in 1,000 confusing situations. Let's just simplify it, 1,000 skirmishes, confusing skirmishes in terms of target selection, if you should go in or not, when you should go in, shit like that. If you expose yourself to 1,000 scenarios and you review those 1,000 scenarios, you're going to be a hell of a lot better of a player, intuitively understanding the game, holistically, everywhere. And you might not even understand how you've gotten better and even what you've got better at, but there is intuitive improvement there, muscle memory, pattern recognition. That's what solving 1,000 puzzles does. That's kind of like how I tell people to give them courage what the journey's going to look like.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I've experienced that with Yag, that D1 player in my program, where I was really pressuring myself to give him learning objectives, and I just couldn't find ones.
Yeah, sometimes it's not.
Sometimes there is none. Yeah, I'll literally say you got to play. So literally, what I say, Andy, this is my review process for these people. That they have good fundamentals, but they don't have the great skirmishing and game sense, situational awareness. I say, okay, here's a timeline, 0 to 35 minutes. In a game, you're going to experience at least 2 to 3 confusing moments where you've lost clarity. You don't know what to do. You're confused. You're lost, or you're anxious. You're scared. You don't know. You go to those 2 to 3 moments and you consolidate that learning and you make sense of it. That's it in the review. 2 or 3 things, 2 or 3 moments. It could be a skirmish. It could be a lost dragon fight. It could be a moment where you didn't know how to play weak side, or if you should have played weak side, whatever the fuck it is. And then that's it. Now, those 3 scenarios could be very different in every single game of your block. Who cares? Doesn't matter. You're exposed. Again, that's 6 puzzles across 2 games, 9 puzzles across 3 games.
I'd say the higher elo you go, the less it's harder to do.
Yes, the less structure. That's spot on.
Yeah.
Because that's something that I experimented with personally, trying to set learning objectives. It just collapsed. I'm trying to set a good example for the students, and it just didn't stick, and it didn't do anything.
I actually played worse, by the way. When I set learning objectives for myself, I actually played worse. I was too rigid.
Too rigid, yeah.
Way too rigid. Which is a bit, sounds hypocritical, but again, it's to the rank. This is why, yes, spot on. The higher you get, the less specific you can get with your learning objectives. That's just the reality. Any other areas you want to explore?
We could maybe talk about our journeys currently.
I think we can wrap it up with that because being on for 2 hours here.
Okay.
Wait, really?
Yeah, time flies in here. We're in a
Ish. The time capsule. Yeah, I mean, for me, my solo queue, I started every day 3 blocking at the beginning of the year, but yeah, I've dropped off my solo queue a lot to focus on my Below Gold coaching program right now. So I'll say I'll probably get back to it. I don't even know if I'll get back to it properly by the time the split ends. Like, I'm happy to finish like Grandmaster. I might even finish Master. But I just love learning these new champs for my Below Gold players right now. So we'll see how we go.
Isn't that quite a stark contrast to what you normally push for, though? Like being really
just
high elo and being a part of the journey as much as you see. I don't want to call you out, but
live on camera.
I'll say,
Andy's saying
I'm currently a contradiction to my own confidence. But in the long term, I'm going to help more people. That's the way I justify it in my mind. I just need to speed up my because I've been a bit slow on my Below Gold program.
So what are the narratives here, Andy? Let's break it down.
I was just saying, I hope you don't have any toxic labels or narratives, swarming around in the back of your mind.
Oh, no, I got plenty. I'm ready to tackle them when I get back into my journey. So I don't have much to comment. I'm getting a lot of
comment.
I got a lot of support games recently in my solo queue, so I need to revisit my support.
It's a good excuse.
Yeah. But that's to answer your question, no comment on my journey.
I hope to see that fire light up again within you.
Yes, hopefully.
I want to see you popping off in my games again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you've seen me. I think we played solo queue each other a time at this point.
I'll be honest, I'm kind of, as of recently, I haven't actually played that much solo queue. I kind of went hard when I was doing my Ari guide, playing a shit ton of Ari. Developed a lot of mastery in Ari, learned that champion in depth. And then, like I was saying on the other podcast, like I just got in a hole. Like I played too much of one champion and I just like lost I just got too rigid in my view of the game. So I
that
just
was earlier this year, right? Not recently.
no, it's recently. That's why you'll see on my match history recently. I just said I'm going to play whatever I feel like because I was just jacked up. Like
Yeah.
I just felt really tucked in.
We talked about in our last episode that when we work on champion guides, we become way worse at the game because we're just obsessed with thinking about how to teach one champion.
Dude, you get tunnel vision and you lose perspective on what's actually important. Like you obsess over things. So I got to a point where I was obsessing over every cue, and then and I would miss a cue and I'd get angry at myself, and then it'd be like, I can't show this lane phase. It's just too many miscues. And and then I'm thinking about that in the game, and then you know what I mean? Like so that's that's what was happening to me anyway, regardless of whether it's the right or wrong thing. That's just a reality.
Like if I play my 3 block, I'll play Rek'Sai, but throughout this podcast, many times I've been thinking about, okay, how do I teach Nocturne R better? That's what I'm focusing on, Nocturne R's, and now I'm going to be thinking in the game, like randomly pop up in my head. Oh God, I wonder how I'll play this false Nocturne right now. That's just the way it is.
But in saying that, for me, I'm going to try and get now that my Ari guy's done, I'm going to try and get at least a 2 to 3 block a night on my main. That's what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to try and get a few games on my other another account, learning champions for my guides, but I'm going to try and at least get a 2 block on my main.
So you do have a second account for guides?
For learning champions.
Okay.
Yeah. Or yeah. But I don't, this is not for learning champions it's very specific. So I have another account for making content for my below gold program, because you can't use footage of challenger games for low elo content, because the game...
I'm not playing the champion, I'm playing the game of League of Legends.
He doesn't teach the champ very well.
So I've found that, I think I mentioned this in the podcast, I'm able to fully teach a champion playing normal games. Like figure out the identity, all that sort of stuff. It's worked really well for...
And it's more realistic to what they will experience, because the games just flow a different way.
Even recently for Wukong and Hecarim, teaching some Master and Grandmaster players, I've literally been able to teach them from playing normal games with my champion. Because you just learn the champion way quicker in normal games.
And also on top of this, right? You go into a challenger game and then you're just like, okay, here's, let's use an example, M4 and Kindred invading my Evelyn here at level 3. Okay, kills him on the red buff. Okay, now he's going on the other side, kill him again. And now what
how do I teach the champion?
Or I either got to get prior, ditch my wave and help this guy, and then what the fuck are we doing? What is this game? So that's what I've experienced trying to do that content on my main. It just doesn't work.
But back to your journey, you had pretty high elo. You were like 1200 plus, rank 4, rank 5.
Yeah.
That was really impressive.
Yeah, I was killing it. And I feel like I had a lot of breakthroughs, like I was saying before, with my skirmishing, like just focusing on going and just pressing the go button and just getting out of my comfort zone. When I get back into it next week, that's going to be kind of my focus point, like getting out of my comfort zone, doing what my intuition says not to do.
Yeah, it's amazing how accurate of a mirror solo queue is. Like when you were 1200 plus, I mean, you're not far off there, but I could feel like obviously you deserved that rank.
Yeah.
And you felt like a 1200 plus.
I felt like it,
player.
yeah. I was making 1200 LP decisions 100%, and I was playing the skirmishes like at a 1200 level.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. And I feel like for me to get back to that level, I got to really get uncomfortable. I got to actively, like you said before, like I got to force it. Like I got to come in with a particular mindset. Like I got to be in that zone and just fuck shit up.
Yep.
You got to have that fuck shit up mindset,
Agreed.
And if you don't have that fuck shit up mindset, you're just gonna miss stuff, and you're gonna be scared. You're gonna hesitate. You're gonna miss the windows, and And at least for me, my default response is that comfort zone of, I'm gonna wait for the enemy to miss position, and then there'll be an opportunity. But then they're the games that I'll lose slowly, and in at that rank that matters. Like between top 10, like 1200 and 1400, that matters a shit ton.
Yeah,
that is the difference actually, in my experience. Yeah. What about you and your solo queue, Andy?
Yeah, for myself, so I peaked rank 2, which is the highest in my career, which is it's cool in one sense, but also it didn't felt deserved. It felt like just a window on the top of the ranked ladder where there was just a lull in LP. I didn't feel like I owned that rank 2, even though I was really proud of myself. I felt really good. Deep down, I knew that it was just like kind of a window. If that makes sense. But so I've been playing pretty consistently, and then I went to Taiwan for I think just over a week, and I played really aggressive champions over there. My most played was Pike, I think, and that's something I just can't do in OS because there's too much of an onus of closing games out early, and the level of play is just not high enough.
Yep.
So I need to adapt my champ pool accordingly. And so I played Pike, and I was super proactive over there. And then I came back and I played like an absolute psycho on one of those champs, I think, and I just lost. And then I just needed to, come back down to earth and play my champs. And what I've done recently is I've always been very proactive with my champ pool, like Rakan, like Rel, etc. But I've pivoted a little bit more to independence and fluidity throughout the game. I'm spamming Karma at the moment, and I've been having a lot of success on her. And Thresh, he's quite independent. He can go with the flow, and he doesn't need to win super early either. And Tarm on my Smurf a lot. So I'm probably going to be playing a lot of Karma and Tarm. But the funny thing is, I'm playing them so psychotically, and it's so rewarding that I'm not quite sure where to sit on them, especially if I'm going to make a guide on them soon. Because you think of a champion like Karma, Enchanter, obviously lane bully, but, from your logic earlier, you would rather just play solid and disciplined and to your champ's strengths. But, the other thing about Enchanters is they have so much peel and range that you have a higher limit to be a psycho. And so I'm just kind of feeling that out a little bit and cementing my champ pool is probably going to be spamming Karma Tarm, maybe adding Bard back.
So what do you feel as though your weakness is right now? What's preventing you from getting rank 1?
I think if I stick, I'm feeling really confident in a good spot right now. I think if I spam Karma right now, I can contest. I'll be rank 3, rank 2 pretty quickly. I don't know how to crack the rank 1 code. And I'm very self-critical. I don't see any glaring areas of weakness. It's just, I think the stars need to align in some way. I think the champ I play needs to be really strong in the meta, or the top of the ladder has a lull. Or I'm probably missing something, but I'm not sure. It's tough.
It's hard to see it.
I think it's really tough if you're playing supports like Rakan and Rel and trying to be engagers and be proactive. I think I need to embrace Enchanters a little bit more and just experiment with that a little bit.
Be very interesting to see. Yeah, we'll verse each other, I'm sure. We're very similar rank at the moment, so we both could probably be in the same game. So
yeah.
That'll be interesting.
I won't even get your games on the struggling Grandmaster, low Grandmaster player at the moment.
Wait, but if you played and took it seriously, right?
Yeah. At first, it's funny how Andy articulates everything. My mindset right now is I just need to be a challenger player again. That's what I need to get to.
I want to notice a challenger player under your name tag.
Yeah.
Nathan, you should be challenger. Yeah. I'm going to say, right, there's no excuse for you to not be at least challenger. Given your knowledge of the game, come on, man. You can get some games in.
Pick up the slack.
Yes, pick up the slack. I think with Andy here, peer pressure and calling you out.
Right, here we go.
You got to get back to at least
after this podcast.
800, 900.
I'm playing a 3-block. I'm going for my 3-block after this.
Excellent.
All right.
Coach has got to be challenger.
That's
got to be challenger, dude.
I know.
Got to.
All right, you guys are inspired. You'll see me in the range this week.
He said on camera, so you guys in the audience be checking his
Nathan Mott OS, Nathan Mott OPGG.
Here we go.
All right, that's it for our episode, everyone. Today, yes.
Notification for next.
Oh yes,
Oh,
yeah. So
I'm just running the show now.
Yeah. I'm just going to be replaced for the next episode. So next week, we've had so many requests about top lane stuff. We've had support. We've had Cupcake on, Coach Cupcake for the last 3 episodes. Obviously, Curtis on Mid Jungle. We're going to have a top lane guest next week. We've talked about him before. Biopanther. He's always pretty much rank 1 most of the time.
In rank 1 a lot.
One of the best top laners in our Osh region. What we're going to do is we're going to be talking a lot about the Gambler's Eclipse. So what we want to do is, you guys know, obviously a lot of our audience here is mid and jungle. If you know any friends or you're a top laner yourself, with any ranks, send in VODs to brokenbyconceptshow@gmail.com. When I say VODs, record your game, upload it to YouTube.
We're talking
POV.
Yeah. Record your VODs POV and upload it to YouTube.
Yep.
And then email that link to us. And the email will be in the description.
Yeah, just our normal mailbag email. And we will review some games and we'll get into the details about top lane.
Any rank.
Any rank.
Any rank. Yeah.
Yep. Any champion. If we want
Any
to
champ,
tanks.
any rank.
Yep. Biopanther is an expert on tanks.
Yes, he does specialize in that.
If you want to,
But he can play everything.
yes, yeah. I mean, he's basically a field player as well.
He's a field player.
In terms of his getting ranked. So yeah, hopefully that's exciting for the top laners of the podcast, and Curtis and I will learn a lot because we know nothing about top lane.
Yep.
That's it for episode, guys. Good work. We'll see you next week.